Welcome, Ramanand. Welcome to this edition of Smart Levers.
Thanks, Harish.
So, today we're going to talk about something which is not intuitively very easy to understand or very clear. We're going to talk about systems versus goals. So, what is this whole idea of systems versus goals that we want to talk about?
So let's take an example. Let's say you came to me and you said you want to read more, and you have a goal like reading 52 books in a year. And you just chosen the goal because you think everyone is doing this, or it seems like a really good stretch goal for you to rejuvenate your love of reading. But so I might turn around and say, Harish, that sounds like an ambitious goal. And let's say you end up doing 15 books in a year. At the end of the year, you might look back and say, I failed at this goal. And that's not really a good way of looking at it because even if you do consider it a stretch goal, you still feel some sense of regret. Instead, why not aim for something like just aiming to read regularly? The regularly could be once a day for 15 minutes, it could be 1 hour a week, and turn that into a system. And in the process, there are days when you may not feel like reading, and if you skip reading for whatever reason, you don't feel like you've let yourself down. So the idea of a system versus a goal was introduced, made popular by the cartoonist Scott Adams, who wrote about this in a blog post and also in his book How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. So you can fail at systems and still win big, but if you fail at goals, then you might look back and you may actually do very well. You may succeed at almost everything and still lose big when it comes to a goal. So just to kind of give a more textbook definition of system versus goals, in a system, the focus is on the journey, and in the goal, the focus is on the destination.
Right. And talking about that book, the one thing that struck me about this idea of system versus goal was that when you're chasing goals, you are in a perennial state of unhappiness, right? Because you've not completed the goal, you've not finished it. So you're always lacking in terms of completing that goal. Whereas in system, you can actually deal with that day. You can talk about whether you did read that day or not, and you can feel happy about having read that day. So I thought that was a very important insight that Scott Adams talks about in that book, and on that note about systems versus goals. So that's great. But why is it important for the upleveler? We talk about this being a series of levers that should be part of the uplevelers toolkit. So I'm going to label all the listeners of this as uplevelers. So why is it important for uplevelers to know about systems versus goals?
So one thing that Scott Adams calls out is that when you are chasing a goal, you're so laser focused on that goal that you miss out on other opportunities, other things that may be happening around you. Whereas in a system, you are more likely to spot these opportunities, and you have a much open canvas. When you are pursuing a series of activities. So, for anyone who's an upleveler, think of upleveling as a set of milestones. There is really no end goal. There are a series of levels that you move up, and things are always shifting around us. So the goals can easily become irrelevant. I mean, they could be irrelevant in the long term. Some of them are irrelevant before you have even kind of the ink has dried on your resolution. So for an upleveler, I think it's important to think in terms of systems, just so that there is so much uncertainty, and systems help you deal better with uncertainties than goals.
Right. And how do we use this idea in our work, Ramana?
Yeah, we are out there to help people up level and be relevant, and we offer things like compounds, for examples, that are sorely in the system space. However, for us, knowing whether a particular engagement at a company or a particular individual, when they come to us, are they looking for a system or for a goal, can be a very useful way of setting expectations. So for instance, the reading example that we took, or the curiosity example that we took, so some companies want to encourage their employees to be more curious. That is a perfect candidate for establishing a system. So you might establish a channel of content. You might then establish a routine around it, a ritual around it, and then the goal is to keep this alive and sustainable, and not overstretch yourselves to the point of burnout. But in certain situations, let's say you're preparing for an upcoming event, you are trying to learn about a very specific topic, let's say you're learning about blockchain and you have to do a presentation around it, that becomes more naturally oriented towards a goal. So just understanding the distinction or in the problem brief, whether it is worthy of a system or a goal, can be very useful when setting and meeting the right expectations.
Right. And any specific roles or kinds of people that you think will, really benefit from knowing about this distinction, and, in what kind of situations will they find this very useful?
Yeah, so most of our up levelers listening to this will either fall into the category of people doing something for their teams, or people just taking charge of their own up leveling trajectory. So I would say for the former, for doing something for your teams, uh, know that you want to ideally implement systems that are going to keep them. If you're talking about resilience, you're talking about empathy, you're talking about authenticity, all these lend themselves better to system sort of goals. But if you're talking about point solutions where you want to show value, you want to show that in our upleveling journey we have achieved a milestone, like produced an artifact which is a patent, those become very goal oriented in nature. So for the first audience, I would say that when you get into the design, uh, get understand this difference, because the way you will approach this, the way you will do your recognition is very different. Whereas for individuals, you might, whenever you are thinking about habit creation for yourself, it could be curiosity habits, it could be health habits, it could be food habits. Uh, if your goal is not to run that marathon or to read 52 books, but you just want to keep yourselves mentally, physically fit and relevant, then invest in a goal. So systems versus goals is for everybody. Sometimes the object of it is directed externally or towards oneself.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ramanan. So we haven't really set a goal for this series of us. It's more of a system of sharing, whatever we have benefited from and what we think is valuable. Of course, when we get this positive stroke, like I just saw one comment today on LinkedIn about how somebody actually looks forward to these videos every Monday and makes his sort of day and week. That's a great goal to feel happy about, though it's not a stated goal. So on that note, thanks a lot, Ramanand, and let's move forward in our system.
Thank you.